Hi, this is a quick recording to demonstrate how to complete your research matrix that you'll be using for your literature review. As you know, you're going to need a large number of studies for your literature review, and using this matrix is going to help you both collect the information in an easy to organize way, but it's also going to help you to synthesize the literature as you're writing your literature review. So I want to first start out, I've taken an article here and I've actually used it to complete the research matrix. So I wanted to show you how that's done. So the article that I've done here is for effects of perseverative interest-based token economy on challenging and on-task behavior in a child with autism. So the first thing you can see here is I put in the reference in APA format. So it's not formatted on the line with the hanging indent, of course, but all of the relevant information is here for the reference in APA style, so that it's very easy to then copy and paste that into the reference list and then do the formatting with the hanging indent as needed. So that's the reference notice 2 that I've included the DOI number, the volume, the page number, the journal is in italics, the title is in regular text with the first word of the title capitalized and all the rest are not. The authors are in APA format with the year. So you'll want to make sure that when you put in that reference, make sure that you put in the whole reference. Take the time to do it right away, and then you'll have it and it becomes easy to do. Next, I went through and looked at what the independent variable and the dependent variables are. Now, if you remember, the independent variable affects the dependent variable. So the independent variable is often the intervention itself that is being used. So in this case, what they're doing is they're looking at the use of a token economy, and there's actually two independent variables in this study. They're looking at a token economy that does not use perseverative interests as token, and a token economy that does use perseverative interests. And that information can be found, sometimes it's in the abstract. Otherwise, you're going to spend most of your time finding this early information in the methods section. Particularly when you're going down to here and it talks about what is done, what the procedure was. So it talks about the interventions. So those are the independent and dependent variables, and they're looking at, in this study, measuring it on the child's challenging behavior and on task behavior. So there have two independent variables and two dependent variables. The subject you can get from, again, both the method section when they talk about the participant. Oftentimes, although not always, it's also up here in the abstract. Is kind of a quick place to get it. So I kind of usually start at the abstract and then confirm down in the method section to make sure that the participant is there. Sometimes you'll want to provide a little more information than that, sometimes not. This is a single case design with only one student, so it's pretty straightforward. The measure, so for that information, again, coming down here to the research design, here it talks about what is being done, the token economy with perseverative interests and non-perseverative. In the procedure is where you find what the measure was. So they did here, you can see the 10-second partial interval recording, and for challenging behavior, that's how they measured the dependent variable of challenging behavior, and then whole interval recording was done for 10-second whole interval recording was done for the independent variable. And they also used the alternating treatment designs that should be in here as well. So an alternating treatment design was the study used for, was the procedure, the method used for the for this study. Then I went and looked at the internal validity and threats and the external validity. So for internal validity, the way they made sure that there was internal validity in the study was, so basically they're looking at what could happen in the study that they did to make sure that this study is valid. So first of all, they looked at inter-observer agreement and made sure that how they were collecting data and what they were collecting data on was clearly defined, and then they videoed that dependent variable on 30% of the sessions and calculated inter-observer agreement. So 2 people scored, and they made sure that those people had a high level of inter-observer agreement. Then they also made sure that they assessed the treatment integrity so that the program was implemented the way it was supposed to be implemented, and they assessed that for 30% of the sessions. The reading level of the stories, the types of backup reinforcers, the number and timing of opportunities to exchange tokens were all held constant. So in this study, there were no threats to internal validity. They did a really good job with that. In terms of threats to external validity, they used an alternating treatment research design. And that is one of, when you look at some of the studies on evidence-based practice and using specific research designs to establish experimental control, alternating treatment research in single case design is one of the designs that has been shown to provide experimental control. Multiple baseline in single subject is another one, as is withdrawal designs where you do the A-B, and it has to be A-B. It can't just be A-B to establish experimental control. The session duration and time of day were held constant. The threats to external validity, there was only one subject, so that means that the results are not necessarily readily generalizable to other individuals with autism. And that's a general threat you'll find in single subject design because there's often a very small number of subjects. However, what this research does do is it's going to add to the research via replication. Then after I went and filled out that, then I went down and I looked at the results of the study. So I read through the results and the discussion, and I used that to complete this section. So in the results and the discussion, they talked that both interventions resulted in an increase in on-task behavior. So both interventions, the token economy, either using perseverative interest or non-perseverative interest, were effective. However, they found that the perseverative interest token economy resulted in a higher level of on-task behavior. So while both were effective, using those perseverative interest tokens actually was more effective. Both interventions also resulted in a decrease in challenging behavior. And again, the perseverative interest token resulted in lower levels of challenging behavior. So using those perseverative interest tokens was even more effective for reducing challenging behavior. So the token, perseverative interest token economy increased on-task behavior and decreased challenging behavior. In the discussion, they talk about how these findings replicate previous research, and I put in here what previous research that it replicated, because when I'm going to do a literature review, having that information there, I can actually go to those studies and add to this. So I'm going to make my research synthesis even better and stronger, because I'm going to be able to talk about multiple studies that show the effectiveness of token economies. And then finally, the findings demonstrate effectiveness of interest-based token economies in special education and in inclusion classrooms. And that's another thing that might be helpful as I'm writing my literature review, being able to talk about that. So this information, it's going to help you to synthesize the research. So you'll want to make sure that there's things that you put in here. In particular, when you're doing your literature review, you're going to be writing in terms of what topic you're writing on. So you'll be looking at the independent variables and the dependent variables as a way to kind of combine research and synthesize. So you can look at lots of different ways that challenging behavior and on-task behavior were intervened on. If your study is also going to be either reducing challenging behavior or increasing on-task behavior. So you can talk about lots of interventions that were used to do that. Or if you can also talk about token economy itself and look for other studies that used token economies as a way to synthesize literature and talk about multiple studies that do that. The more studies you can cite that talk about the same things, the stronger your argument is in your synthesis of literature. So you want to be combining information and talking about studies that found the same thing rather than doing what is more like an annotated bibliography where you're talking about one study after the other. The internal and external validity threats, you will use that information when you're critiquing individual studies, and the results and comments you'll be able to use as you're synthesizing literature. So I hope that this helps you both complete this research matrix, and remember you'll be doing this for multiple articles, and then also helps you start to think about how you might be writing your literature review as we move through the modules here, where you will complete the literature review for your Action Research Project Demonstration of Mastery project.